She said she was heading into the portal, and the chief immediately asked if she wanted backup, but she casually told him to chill. It was personal business, nothing more. However, in the heat of the moment, she realized she had forgotten her sword. Slightly embarrassed, she asked if anyone had a spare weapon. The chief, of course, handed her a rock pickaxe, which was far from the ideal combat weapon she had hoped for. Not exactly the sword or spear she was expecting. She raised an eyebrow at it and asked, "You got anything better? Maybe a sword? A spear?" Meanwhile, inside the boss room, the atmosphere was thick with tension, the kind that made everyone's skin crawl. The squad, already trembling from the sight of the Orc King's intimidating presence, knew that if even a fraction of the superior orcs were unleashed, the entire city could be obliterated in mere minutes. It was clear that they had to stop the bond from being broken, but even the 4 guards surrounding the Orc King looked like nightmares come to life, towering figures whose very gaze sent chills down your spine. The soldiers, too frightened to act, were just waiting for the right moment to strike. The Orc King, not one to waste time, removed his mask and glanced down at the humans. "Are you all afraid of me?" He asked, clearly relishing the fear that swirled in the room. Did he really need an answer? Judging by the state of the soldiers, who looked like they might soil themselves at any given moment, it was abundantly clear what the answer was. Being no other option, the leader of the group took it upon himself to charge in alone. But before he could get even a few steps, the Orc King using gravity magic to repeatedly slam the man's head into the floor, playing a cruel game of catch with his skull. Just when the Orc King was about to end him, someone stepped forward to intervene. That someone was Jin Wu. Calm and composed, Jin Wu, his expression unbothered, replied that he had never felt an energy quite like this before. The Orc King, sensing his own power surging, seemed to be getting cocky. But Jin Wu, unfazed, hit him with the chilling line, "Oh yeah, this fight's going to be brutal, just for you guys." With that, Jin Wu summoned his shadow army, stronger than ever before. Outside the portal, Inspector Jinchul arrived in his lavish limo, and the miners were utterly confused. One of them, a slick-back hair guy, was now demanding to know why Jin Wu had spent 2 full days working as a miner. The chief, realizing the jig was up, confirmed that Jin Wu had volunteered as a tech to join the attack squad. The inspector, still in disbelief, wondered what kind of person Jin Wu really was. He then asked the chief if Jin Wu had killed anyone, and Jinchul ominously replied, "We'll find out in tomorrow's headlines." Suddenly, a massive explosion of energy erupted from the portal, nearly flattening everyone nearby. Inside, Chahayan was struggling to understand how Kihun's team managed to down so many superior orcs. But if the energy emanating from the boss was any indication, none of them were making it out alive. Back in the boss room, the Orc King mocked Jin Wu, laughing at the idea of Jin Wu's wimpy soldiers taking on his mighty army. He activated Monarch's domain, boosting his shadow soldiers' strength by 50%. This was no ordinary army. The mages, watching in stunned silence, could barely comprehend the sheer power at play. Undeterred, he just unleashed his full might, hammering the orcs into oblivion. Igris was out there too, cutting through 30 orcs in a blink of an eye. But none of them could hold a candle to the real powerhouse, Jin Wu himself. He was fighting as though it was child's play, showing no mercy as he tore through orcs like they were nothing. But just as he thought he had the upper hand, the Orc King dropped the Dragonfire Anthem, a devastating spell that wiped out almost all of Jin Wu's shadow soldiers in a single attack. The Orc King, growing desperate, summoned a massive iceberg and dropped it on Jin Wu. But before Jin Wu could react, he had already absorbed a full magic combo from the boss. The Orc King, seeing the shadows regrowing again and again, screamed that he would continue to obliterate them until Jin Wu's mana ran dry. Meanwhile, the weaklings were scrambling for cover to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. With all that magic flying around, Jin Wu was finding it difficult to get close enough to land a decisive blow on the Orc King. Outside, the association's members quickly realized the portal was much stronger than anticipated. Reinforcements were ordered, and they began to move in. Inside, the Orc King was almost laughing at Jin Wu, thinking he was on the verge of running out of mana. But unlike the last time in his class change quest, Jin Wu now had access to infinite mana potions. That's when things took a drastic turn for the better. Jin Wu began extracting the shadows from the fallen superior orcs, absorbing their strength and adding them to his ever-growing army. He then locked eyes with the Orc King and said, "You're next, buddy." The Orc King was momentarily stunned, his brain freezing up as the name Shadow Monarch hit him like a thunderclap. Meanwhile, at the Hunters Guild HQ, Chairman Choi, who had been keeping tabs on the situation, thought the task was well within Ki-hun's team's capabilities, but just to be sure, he ordered his assistant to gather the strongest hunters in the guild. If necessary, they'd ask for help from other guilds. Back inside the portal, the Orc King's generals charged into the fray. But they were no match for Jin Woo's generals. Iron easily overwhelmed the first orc, while Igris fought with such speed and precision that he had to drop his sword, only for it to zip back into his hands in a blur. Tank, not to be left out, smashed an orc so hard it practically vanished. The Orc King, infuriated, activated the Hymn of Agony, a curse that paralyzed, blinded, and trapped everyone in place. He unleashed a torrent of magic on Jin Woo, but it shattered effortlessly against his defenses. Jin Woo summoned his mages to obliterate the annoying iceberg that had been stalling him, and with the power of the Orb of Avarice, they became even more formidable. A fireball pierced through the Orc King's shield and exploded directly in his face, infuriating him even further. Cha, who had finally made her way into the midst of the chaos, was stunned by the sheer number of soldiers Jin Woo had summoned. She ran up to the attack squad asking, "What the hell is going on here?" Even they couldn't provide an answer. Meanwhile, the Orc King was done playing games. With an enraged roar, he combined 300 spells into one devastating attack and vowed to crush Jin Woo like an insect. He stomped down with the force of a colossal titan, launched a massive fireball, then followed it up with 50 more. They wiped out both Jin Woo's shadow soldiers and the superior orcs. With a malicious grin, the Orc King taunted, "Are you starting to regret it, little human?" But before the words had even fully left his mouth, Jin Woo was already on top of him, driving a dagger straight into his eye. Turning into a giant made him a bigger, more vulnerable target, and Jin Woo wasted no time proving that even a lone mage without his guards was no match for an assassin-type hunter. He swiftly summoned his ruler's hand to grab chains, binding the boss before hurling him around with ease, leaving the monstrous adversary reeling. Meanwhile, Jin Woo's incredible display caught the attention of Cha, who had come to lend support, but upon witnessing the sheer power unleashed, she realized Jin Woo no longer needed help. Even the head of surveillance seemed to acknowledge his power, leaving Cha wondering just how formidable he truly was. She asked Jin Woo what he thought of him, but he merely shrugged, admitting that he didn't know him that well. With the battle reaching its climax, Jin Woo coolly told the boss that his fate was sealed the moment his guards fell. The boss snarled in defiance, but it was too late. Jin Woo called upon the spirits of the fallen to finish him off. As the boss, in his final moments, saw his former generals end his life, Jin Woo emerged victorious, leveling up and preparing to extract the boss's soul. The crowd was left stunned as he did so, and when he was done, Jin Woo joked that the boss would be much more docile now as a shadow. He named the soul Tusk, recognizing the elite knight rank it held, a classification he'd never encountered before. The fallen orcs proved to be a significant gain. As Jin Woo finished his extraction, he realized he hadn't noticed the inspector standing nearby. The hunters quickly began clamoring for answers, but the chief stepped in to protect Jin Woo, declaring his situation top secret. They were told to keep quiet about what they'd seen, explaining that Jin Woo had unleashed the power of an S-rank hunter solely to protect them. His team escorted him out, and before he left, Jin Woo was given heartfelt thanks from his comrades. As he prepared to depart, Cha tried to catch up, but her nervousness got the better of her when a mage questioned why she was holding a pickaxe. Cha turned bright red and nervously asked if she looked weird with it. Back to the guild, where Chairman Choi expressed amazement at Jin Woo's power. He asked his assistant to compare his strength to Jin Woo's, and they both realized Jin Woo's abilities surpassed anything they had imagined. Choi acknowledged that his title of Ultimate Hunter might now be a bit of a joke, and determined to recruit Jin Woo, he set his sights on bringing him into the fold. Later, Jin Woo met up with Leo, asking how things had gone with the guild master, and the narrative shifted toward the Hunter Association, where the realization of Jin Woo's immense strength was beginning to sink in for everyone who witnessed his display.